and companies that are on ADP. I'm sure you've heard of a few of these. Some event guidelines and housekeeping rules. So number one, this event will be recorded, and by attending, you grant consent. Number two, use the chat for QA and general commentary. Number three, just be nice, no hate speech. And number four, please post your takeaways on social media, tagging ADP and Amazing Design People list. I think we have another hashtag that you could use, hashtag ADPList X sketch. We will be having a giveaway that's actually sponsored by Sketch, and I believe we have 3 prizes to give away, and those include swag boxes with Sketch licenses, if I'm not mistaken. So please use that hashtag again. That's hashtag ADPListXsketch to be entered into that contest. Cool. So a little bit about me before I pass it off to the host. I'm a product design manager for Wish, where I currently support a team of 10 designers. And my team specifically is related. We deal with everything related to the merchant experience. So anything a seller needs to succeed, that includes acquisition, onboarding, inventory management, shipping, logistics, paying your taxes, et cetera, falls under my team. But I'll go ahead and stop here and pass it off to our first presenter, who is, I believe, Francesco.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Simon, for the intro. I'll be sharing in a sec. Okay, let's see. Yes, I have rights, and there we go. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Go.
Yep, that's good.
Yep, all good. Hello everyone, a very quick intro. Matteo and I are design advocates at Sketch, and in general, we help teams make the most of Sketch. We've been using Sketch forever. We've been designers for a long time. We're experts in not only product design, but also design systems. And on a daily basis, we help teams that come to us asking questions on how to improve the design system, how to improve the workflow, etc. But today, we're going to focus on you, meaning wanting to help you and giving you some tips on transitioning into product design. Matteo, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm super happy to be here. And I'm not only a design advocate at Sketch, but I also am mentoring the ADPList. So I'm super happy for this opportunity of being here and to meet all of you.
Okay, and I see some people still joining, but I guess we'll get going since it's recorded. So, and can you see my screen? And do you see the your faces here as well, or not? Because otherwise, I can move them. Nope.
No, you're good.
It's
okay,
perfect.
Great. Okay, I'll move you up here. You might have already heard this quote because it's been around for a long time, given Steve Jobs, unfortunately, is no longer with us. But this is really key because it's very easy to confuse what product design is. And honestly, if you ask different people, they're all going to give you different definitions. Today, we'll try to give you ours. And of course, one thing that we want to caveat from the beginning, Matteo and I obviously come from different backgrounds, now working at Sketch together. But obviously, everybody has their own opinion about this stuff. It's not like something that is set in stone. It's been around forever. Product design started with closer to the industrial design side of things. And I think that side has been a little more specific for a long time. While instead, While instead, the digital side of product design is a lot newer, okay? Now, some people have been doing it for a long time, but there's a lot more interest in the last few years where, people started getting interested into UX first, or more into that, then UX UI, then maybe prototyping, then product design, and now all these things kind of come together. And so we'll try to highlight some of the differences, but we'll focus on product design today. This is a screenshot from Tesla, and it's obviously showing the Tesla UI, but also the Tesla as a product. And this is kind of, in the past, only what's outside of the screen would have been part of product design. But since digital product design became a thing, how the digital interacts with the physical is also part of product design. And obviously also the standard, what we think of more standard, as in like, when you think of product design, you might think of a website that allows you to accomplish something, that sells you something. It's a combination of the two. You know, here we have Wix as a website that allows you to build other websites. So almost meta there. Then we have examples from Salesforce and IBM apps. Those are also falling into probably what's the most frequent kind of product design that you can see out there, digital product design nowadays. Obviously, apps weren't even around. You know, let's say from before 2009 or 2008. But then on the right side, you can see these are some of the things. One of them is actually something Matteo even worked on, and he can speak more to it. But we're getting into augmented reality. Kiosks have been around for a long time, but still now with new technology get to do more. Even sensors are in our phones, given phones can scan QR codes. Those are expanded the use of the idea of what a product, digital product is. Matteo, do you want to speak to the music console?
Yeah, the last one is one of my past projects. It is a mixing console. I don't know how many of you know it, but I know about them. But it is something that where you've got like hardware and digital stuff that are working together, and super complex product. It is like a cockpit of an airplane, and actually, again, an airplane could be a product. A cockpit of an airplane can be a product, or actually a spacecraft can be a product. And they nowadays are all part of the digital environment as well, because the digital part of them is important more and more and more. And if you saw, I don't know, the Crew Dragon when it started to the space station the first time with the screens and touch screens with the gloves, it was super interesting. And this is something that is part of product design as well. And as designers, we are more required in those areas too. Product design is not only web, app, SaaS, or something like that. There are a lot of other areas, maybe not in the same amount of numbers of requests, but definitely it is an area super interesting.
Shall I go next, Matteo?
Yeah.
So in general, what is product design? Product design, as we said, is, I'd like to define it more as it's something that spans potentially from research all the way to some development, meaning a product designer needs to be aware of all these aspects. Depending on the company you might be in, you might be asked to do more or less and collaborate or not with other roles within the company. Some companies have, under product design, have really everything, even UX and UI. In some others, that is actually might be even separate roles. So depending on what you like to do, we'll cover some of these things later on. What your current experience is, you might want to tackle this. I'm calling a career change. Might be a lateral move, might be a complete change. We'll see. Depends on. We'll see if we can ask some questions and to know who is in the audience today. But just to get a sense, if you actually don't mind posting in the chat where you're coming from, that might help us give you a little more specifics, because otherwise we'll cover still the different scenarios. The product design is not just about how users feel about something, is definitely keeping in mind also the business side of things. You could argue that, and we could go on forever about this, also UX designers cares about that. But let's say, if you will, UX designers might focus on the user first and foremost and defend it to death. Doesn't mean that product designers don't care about it, but product designers also need to keep in mind the feasibility of something. They will be the ones talking to developers more likely compared to UX designer in that sense on how to make that happen. They'll come up with those solutions. UX spans more into the research side of things. Depends, again, what kind of role. There's UX designers and UX researchers, and some researchers don't design anything, just go out there and look up everything. Product designers, especially in a small company, will be doing a little bit of all of these things. So, Matteo, did I miss anything that you think would be key to distinguish here? Actually.
I would add that with product design, when you are a product designer, you also have to take into consideration things that are not only related. Usually, as a designer, you have to take it into consideration, but you have to take into consideration things that are related also with the business. So what are the business goals? Also, the how to sell a product, etc., which is not always part of what we considered in the past, UX and UI design, because it was customer centric and that's it. Product design can be a bit more broader if you want. But what is interesting is, to me, that all those kind of definitions in the end fell under design. And design to me is the key. We are designing something, we are organizing something, we are researching something to create something new for our user, for someone that should use it. And I'm using users and not customers for a reason, because products can be not only for customers, but can be related for people that should work with something, our colleagues, etc., etc. If you think of a design system, it's still a product, but it is not for a customer, it's for our colleagues. So just adding that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thank you, Matteo. So this is what I was mentioning before. It kind of depends where you're at, why you are want to get into product design, but especially where you're at, you might use slightly different approaches to finding a job or switching careers. So let's say you just graduated from design school. How specific was your design school to product design? Some places focus more on the visual aspects or the UX aspect, but not on the business side of things. So understanding the business, as Matteo also mentioned, is key. So depending on that, you might want to learn a few things before you jump in. Doesn't mean that you can get an internship even without having any business knowledge, don't get me wrong. But just to know that there might be depends on what kind of job you apply to later on, they might find some holes in your experience, and therefore you might want to fill some of these gaps. If you're already working as a UI UX designer, you might have already might have not called yourself a product designer. Depends on how much of the things that we mentioned you already done in your previous jobs. If you're coming from a completely different side of things, you could be coming from psychology, you could be coming from something more business related. Some of these things would definitely be useful either in UX or in product design. Understanding even how data can affect your decisions is also a valuable experience. So don't be discouraged if you're coming from something completely different. In different cultures, and we'll speak more to this later, these changes are either welcome or just expected, at least. Nobody's frowning upon those career switches. In the US, it's pretty common, I feel like. I've been in the US since 2004. I'm Italian originally, and I was working in art direction and advertising, art direction and copywriting for advertising back then. I did that in digital advertising in the beginning, then moved into more product design, worked at large and small companies. Nobody ever questioned too much why I was changing all these things. And everything I did in the past was always useful for what I wanted to do next.
Don't tell it to me.
Matteo, I want to speak to your experience.
My bachelor degree is in musicology. Then I've been a coder and a project manager for 8 years, and then I moved to design and transitioning, moving at the beginning from UX particularly because it was more close to what I did. Then also UI. Then just design, as I mentioned before. So the transition is definitely possible, and many times. What is important for a designer is to be able to connect the dots. So this is something that you can learn everywhere. At the same time, sorry if I'm back on the previous screen, Francesco, some sort of school or at least a course, I feel that they can be important. I did one, of course. It really depends on what you need and what you think. Not everyone needs an academic background to be a designer, but definitely knowing a few things is important. So don't discard the fact that you can learn something during a course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things are also changing a little bit. When I started, there was absolutely no course in UX or product design. Like, we're talking about more than 20 years ago. So, and there was absolutely nothing in even in interactive advertising, which probably could have been the closest to maybe doing UX and UI back then. So I'm pretty much self-taught and practiced for a long time. But so you have to consider also your you have to consider your current situation, meaning this fact that if you need a degree or a certificate might depend also on where you're applying. Some companies are really strict on this, and some others actually are more fluid. They care more about the actual experience. So don't be discouraged if you find mostly companies in one way or another. But it is, as Matteo said, having some solid base can be important. There's some things that are easier to learn in the field, and some other are much easier to learn in school. For example, some concepts like, let's say, color theory, and we were joking about it with Matteo the other day, right? Color theory is something that it's going to be very unlikely that somebody will stop and try to teach you while you are at work. But in school, it's something that you definitely cover. So there's some aspects that will be covered in a degree that maybe. So if you don't have a degree, maybe you look into, but you already have a lot of experience, maybe look into some of these things and try to fill some of these gaps.
Yeah, it is also important to mention that not only all the companies can require or not require a degree, but also different countries are used to different way to manage to understand if people are fit for the job role or not. Like here in Europe, I believe it is a little bit less important to have a proper certificate in design, whether in US it seems to be more important. Not saying that this is the average, this is based on my experience, and actually also my experience with you as mentees and people that were connected with me and that told me different things from different countries. I believe that it's important to know and to try to understand what are the requirements around you. And also if you want to apply for a role in a specific country, what is required there more, and that is different from what you are used to.
And I'm looking at the chat in the meantime, and I see some people posting great backgrounds. And I think, for example, I see a scientist background. That's great. I see education and computer science, also great. And I think I saw an architect before as well. I think these are all valid, great previous experiences for multiple reasons, and they all have their pluses. If you're a scientist, you're used to do things methodically and considering data. You don't just come up with a gut feeling and try to go with that, right? You want to make sure that any assumption you're making, then it's validated. And that's definitely great for product design, not only from the visual standpoint, but because in product design, you'll come up with assumptions all the time of things that you might feel like need to be solved, and ideally they come also from some kind of scientific study where you analyze usage of your site or your app, etc., to understand user needs and problems they might run into. But then you want to validate those solutions and iterate. I'll throw it out here. Another concept might be interesting to you is the concept of design sprints. We can link later on. Look into it, because as a product designer, you might be doing a lot of these things. And it's less about just visual and interaction design. There's also other aspects, and interacting with other portion of the business, interacting at the end with developers, creating prototypes, and validating those ideas.
Yeah.
In terms of what kind of studies suit you best, here, again, you might be at different moments in your career and have more or less time, more or less budget. And also, literally, you might be a better learner when, let's say, reading something, or might need a lot of videos. So not every course comes in the same way. So seek things that work for you. I feel like there's not a ton of product design specific courses. There's a lot of product management courses that skew more obviously on the management side of things. And then there's the UX courses. So I would say product design, it would be a little bit in the middle. So kind of doing a little bit of both. And then, Matteo, you want to speak to the specialized versus broad? I know that that's...
This is another important thing that happened many times during my conversation with you as mentees. And to me, it fall into this idea of being specialized in one thing or will be a more broader designer. You have to at some point decide what you want to be. Of course, to start your career, it is probably easier to decide, okay, I'm gonna be focused on only one thing, and I will be super perfect and proficient in that area. But then you will also discover that during your career you will need to increase the things that you can cover. But it is something that you can also decide as a designer. I know that I prefer to be a more broader designer, a holistic designer, and I'm not super specialized in one specific thing. Maybe will discard me from some specific companies, but other companies are looking more for someone like me that can cover more different things. So it is important to think, what does suit me? What kind of things I love to do? How I want to approach my role, and then also you can find the right company for you based on that, because there are differences. There are a lot of differences. It is important to focus on that as well. To me, this is a big tip. It is important to define ourselves and what we love.
Absolutely. And so to that extent, depends if you already know or you don't know, right? Like there's some if you don't know, try a lot of different things, or a few, and try to see if anything you are more interested in, or you're better skilled for. At the end of the day, one of the things is most stressful is about getting the first job in that direction, going into, especially your career change. You want to demonstrate the world that you studied, that you know enough, that you're flexible enough to get into this new career. With that said, that first job can also then will make it easier to get the second job that is closer to that, right? But it depends where you want to ultimately go. You might have to make a few lateral moves to get to your end goal. Depends how far you are from it in the very beginning, and how much you can easily demonstrate that you're ready for that new job. I see somebody self-taught product designer. Design school, learn everything from online courses and practice it. Yep, absolutely. We're not saying it's impossible to be self-taught. There's probably a ton of people out there that are now self-taught, especially because they started a while back, where there was even less need for a distinction between all the talent out there. The more we go ahead, and that happens with pretty much every industry, there are going to be some cases where having a degree might help. Okay. But there's plenty of cases of really successful people that are not self-taught. Well, I'm sorry, they are self-taught and they just kept up to speed. I think that with the industry, one thing that is important here is curiosity. That is important both for yourself and for whoever is hiring. Personally, when I'm hiring, I prefer somebody who's curious. I know technology will always change. There's always going to be something new. 10 years ago, we didn't have mobile phones. Well, maybe 12, let's say, mobile phones that we imagine them today, right? And so a whole new industry and type of designers had to come out. Like there were no, like the kiosks that we had were like really basic things that you could do at the ATM when you get to get cash, right? So now kiosks can do anything you want. So my point is, you want to be curious because you want to make sure to adapt as things change. You might still be a product designer, but who knows what product design will mean in 10 years. Same thing for UX, right? In the beginning of my career, UX was closer to doing wireframings and information architecture, and there was very little about the detail of an interaction. And now some of that falls into UX as well. But things have evolved too, and to the point that now you have UX writers, people that are just writing about, for example, if you're working for Alexa or Siri, there's not a lot of visual that you're bringing to the table. It's mostly about coming up with flows and things like that. Just interest of time, I'm just going to go in next because I think otherwise Matteo and I could talk forever, especially myself. Sorry about that. Matteo, do you want to take this one? And I'll fill in.
Yeah, again, this is the second part of what I was talking before. So where do you want to apply? Do you want to apply to a very known company or some company that is not so known? I don't know, just to mention someone, some of those big companies, like tech companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, etc., or IBM, they have specific requirements, whether other companies that are less known probably don't. But at the same time, they also have a complete different way of manage you as a junior or as in an internship, or even as a designer in general. There are a lot of small companies that need designers, but need designers like the broad designer I am, for instance, but also big companies that need designers like those, but usually not in tech, directly in tech, in other big industries that are not so advanced in the technology side. But it is important to try to understand where do we want to apply. It is important to understand what are the companies we are trying to apply to are requiring to us, because the requirements are different, and they are not only different between company and company, but also by industry, by size, etc. And we can discover it because you can read the job descriptions that we can find on LinkedIn or in other websites. We can know people, try to connect with them and see what they are saying to us about what is required, etc. And of course, there are a lot of information in the web we can find.
Do you want to speak to local versus remote? I mean, that's another aspect.
That's another big aspect, because particularly with COVID, we discovered how much the remote work can be done. A lot of different companies discovered that we can work from everywhere. And of course, it opened up a lot of possibilities for us, but at the same time, it opened up to us a lot more challenges, because we are going to compete with a lot more designers, because designers from all over the world can apply to a remote job. So we can also, we should and we can define where we want to apply. We have also to understand if we want to work in an office, we want to see people face to face, or if we are sweet to work remotely or not. This is something that we can discover, we can try, but we can also think about in advance. And knowing also that if you are applying for a very local job, you are also gonna have less competition. Because, I don't know, Manchester in the UK where I live is a big city, like 3 million inhabitants, but still the number of designers is not so massive. So the competition is not big. Whether if I'm going to apply to a remote job, I can compete with a billion of people and probably a million of designers. So take care of this, and also think carefully about what you're doing when you're applying for a local or a remote job. I'm gonna go also for the last one in this page about cultural differences. This is another important thing, particularly when you are working remotely, but also if you are moving from a country to another country, etc. There are a lot of differences that are super important and interesting to take into consideration when you are applying for a job and you are searching for a job in a culture that is different than your one. I and Francesco both are Italians. We are both living abroad, and we both faced the problem of being in a different and live in a different culture and trying to find a job in a different culture. And I think that a lot of you are facing the same thing. And with the proliferation of remote jobs, this is getting bigger every day. But the cultural differences exist, and we need to know what is expected in a different culture, how to communicate with people that have got a different background, cultural background, what kind of language they are using, and all those kind of things are important. And some of them can be addressed in advance, knowing where we are going to apply. Of course, there are also cultural differences inside the company, and we're going to discover them during the interview process and living there once we are starting the job. But those are less discoverable in advance. Whether the more differences can be seen from a cultural point of view. from outside. But for instance, we can also understand if a company is open to the diversity from how many different people exist in the company, looking at the profiles of the employees or something like that. So this is something that we can search about, and it is important to know it also before we are going to apply to it.
So, and I'm looking at the chat still, and I had something caught my eye. Some people requiring 5 years of experience for internships. Yeah, so that's crazy. I wish companies offering internships were a little more realistic about what they're looking for. There's a mix out there. Of course, companies that have a ton of applicants can add bigger barriers to entry because they're confident they can get people in, even that they might have worked as something else before, and now they want to switch to be a product design intern. So, you know, it is a market. And so that is the reality. I wish it were in that case, that people were realistic and also paid interns for what they're producing. Because, you know, when I started in advertising in Italy, they were giving like the equivalent of, let's say, $5 a day. Okay. And that was like not enough for not even lunch. And I was working 12 hours a day. Now,
that was not even money. That was like you can eat with like a coupon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So those are all aspects. You know, you want to research your company, and we'll mention it a little bit later too. But you want to make sure that you've done the homework, if you will, before applying, because applying is a lot of work, and going through the screening is a lot of work, and you don't want to go through the screening and halfway through burn the bridge with that company because you decide you don't want to keep going. Like, you're right. If they really want to talk to you, you better talk to them. Okay. So in this case, we're going to talk about now we're going to talk about skills and passions. Those are two really important things, especially if you are, I think, for everybody, because it will be really obvious if you care about a topic. And so applying for a first job, either as you're coming out of school or because you're doing career switch. Let's say, example, you want to go do UI design for product design and you have a architectural background, try to leverage that background and go work for a 3D product tool and design their tool, or AutoCAD. That knowledge would take forever to somebody new, an intern in that case, to go learn all the domain knowledge of what it is that you're trying to design, what are the problems you're trying to solve. So leveraging that is useful. If you're coming from psychology, go work for an app that cares about psychology, then maybe that's their topic. The reason I'm saying is because there's so many new designers coming out of school or just wanting to career switch, that if you don't leverage those previous passions and experiences, you're just doing yourself the service, and you're pushing yourself back in the pipeline. And unfortunately, so even knowing the tools, and I'm not talking about just Sketch, you actually need to know every possible tool out there if you can, will make it look useful. You have to consider one thing. There's some designers that made it their career and now they're maybe managers. Some made it there with knowing the tools back then, and now they're just managing and they don't really know much about the latest tools and what you can accomplish with that. For those people, knowing that they can rely on somebody more junior to be useful and they definitely would not be able to teach you those skills, it's a great advantage. That's how I got my first job. I got out of advertising school. I knew how to use Photoshop back then better than the senior art director, and I know he admitted to me, so it's not like but he offered me a job right away. And every other designer in my class, other art director, was more focused only on the idea side of things, and they did not get a job right away, and they went through internship after internship after internship. With that said, that when you're joining a team and you're fresh, although everybody has ideas, you probably want to make sure that you can help others deliver their ideas, because that's going to be the focus. And then afterwards, if you're fast enough, you can actually propose your ideas as well. But rarely, and not to depress you, but it's going to be rare that somebody comes to you and asks you for just your idea for something really big that the company's trying to solve. You're going to be lucky if you can contribute to those ideas. And to be able to execute fast, no matter what tool you're using, is really important. So spend time doing that. I can make other examples, but let's say if you're a nurse, can work in the medical field, and then maybe or you were a doctor. We talked to people that were doctors before, and they wanted to become UX product designers. Using that knowledge, the scientific knowledge, the medical knowledge, get into that space. Unless you really are tapped out, you don't want to hear about it anymore, and then tap onto your second passion. Maybe you are into biking. And so try to go work for companies. Really appreciate having knowledge of the domain. That can be really hard to teach and get into the mindset of the users. You don't want to rely just on your guts, but also on research afterwards. But that's important.
Yeah, just to make an example from myself. So when I was working on the mixing console. They hired me because I didn't hide in my CV, even if a lot of recruiters back then asked me to remove a lot of things. My bachelor degree in musicology, which is completely different than anything. I also added there that I was a project manager, and I also added there that I was a swimming teacher. And swimming teacher for them was important because I had to be able to teach things in my company because they were creating a new team. So that was important too for them. So just be selective with what you are placing in your CV, but don't hide your background. This is super important to me.
Absolutely. Another question I see is about metrics, and I think it's metrics related to portfolio. We could talk more later about that, but the gist is, yes, you want to cover the whatever portfolio especially if you're faking your portfolio, but also if you're working in a company. In general, for a product design, you really want to understand what the problem was in the beginning that you were trying to solve. If you don't start from that and you don't show how your mental process was to solve that problem, and that you actually showed it to people afterwards, they confirm that the problem was solved, you're not really finishing at least that part, the design problem solving, the problem solving side of things. I'm not talking about the development side of things. That obviously is part of, as we said, as product design as well. But you want to make sure that you cover that. So the metrics can be something that you may even decide, I want to work at, I don't know, company X. You find something that you take a portion of their website or their app, you put it in front of users, you give yourself a brief. But you have to make sure to share that brief with whoever is analyzing your portfolio in a quick fashion too, like problem statement, and then showing the research you did, and then immediately and then the solution, and now how much it solved the problem, if it did. Obviously in the portfolio you hope it will solve the problem, right, most of the times. But don't get into a super long explanation where at the beginning you only have the problem. You want to have almost a recap at the very beginning. People looking at portfolios are going really fast, right? And sometimes they don't even, depends on who it is in the company looking at it. They might not have the background to evaluate every aspect, but so they can see still that you have analytical experience and knowledge and skills. So having a recap of it, and then if they want to dive deeper, they'll be able to see the rest of the project. And the other thing we can talk later, which is actually it's a portfolio slide, you have very little time to impact in somebody when you are being the recruiter or being the design manager that's hiring in that case. So you want to be selective, and when you're showing them, in the beginning probably you're not going to have a lot, but don't add something to your portfolio that is not relevant. Ideally, I used to also modify my portfolio depending on the company I was applying to, because like Matteo, I also worked in a lot of different things. I worked from, like, as I said, advertising to pharmaceutical to product design for consumers to like really all the gamut. And sometimes there's some industries that are not compatible. A good manager should be able to look at your ability to problem solve. But sometimes some companies, let's say you worked in healthcare, they might not be able to see that there's a lot there that you could have done that is valuable also for another industry. So again, research who you're applying to, how flexible and open they might be, customize your portfolio and be transparent. Don't pretend you did a lot more than you actually did, because if you were to lie there, that's not a very good starting point, right? They would notice right away when they interview you, and so you're just wasting your time and their time and burning that bridge.
Yeah, I want to add another thing here in the portfolio. Treat your portfolio as your product. It's a product itself, and show me, and the hiring manager, I was an hiring manager in the past, show me that you take care of me, my time. I'm a user, and show me how good you are through your portfolio. This is something that is super important to me.
And at the end, it's needed to get, most of the times, to get you in front of somebody. So that's your best business card. It's rare nowadays that in UX, UI, or product, you are not asked for that first. Now, there's a problem of NDAs. You don't want to reveal things that you signed an NDA for. Definitely not on a public website. If you ever were to show something, make sure to obfuscate anything that is not cool to share, because the company that is hiring you will be concerned that you might be doing the same thing when you leave with their stuff. Okay, so now not every company is super, I don't want to say paranoid, but there's some companies obviously where IP is really important, and some others where, you know, everything you do is going to go live sooner or later. So once something is live, you don't have to worry too much about it, but you cannot reveal too much of what the internal data was. Once you're working on your own project, you have the advantage you can do whatever you want with that. And so that allows you to shine. But yeah, be transparent and be able to talk about all the aspects. As we said, product design is not just about some of the things in the whole process, design process. Go all the way to business analytics and business and development and problem solving that is broader than just the UX side of things. Okay, let's see. Yep. Okay, great. I'm glad there's a very healthy chat going on in the meantime. So just a few more tips. I know we have just a few minutes left. So we really talked about company hunting. Matteo, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
This is my way to express this idea. Try to define like the industry you want to work with, the kind of some companies that you really like, and the product they are doing you like, and try to find other companies that are doing something similar. Trying to find I don't know, your newsletter that are talking about this topic, etc. You will find other companies that can be a good place to and a good place to have a job for you as well. So not focus on the known one. You can find a lot of small companies that are super interesting, that are doing super innovative things, that maybe are not as known as others. And I believe that this is a very good and healthy way to find something, because it's not only job hunting, but it's also a company hunting. And then, we mentioned at the beginning, product design is not only web app or SAS or other things like that. There are a lot of other things that are super interesting. I've been working in the audio industry and I super enjoyed that time. And I will go there back if I can. Or I don't know, there is the automotive industry, there is the aerospace industry, there are a lot of other, the medical industry, etc. There are plenty of different areas that can be of interest for us as product designers. So just don't focus on the known and the most obvious one, particularly if they can be something that you like.
Yep, and we talked about not applying to over applying, right? Be useful and humble. I thought it was a good way to end there. I already mentioned about being knowledgeable about all these things and being helpful, and knowing that you are entering the business will help you also network better. Nobody wants to network with somebody that is not helpful, is not useful, is not pleasant to work with. And that's one thing that it's definitely missing now with working remotely. Although it's great to, once you have established your presence in the industry, everybody knows you, you can totally work remotely. Working in an office will allow you to pick up on some dynamics that otherwise might be hard, to be able to meet people that might not be on your close team and be able to network. Hopefully we'll get to go into meetups in person soon, so I can't wait for that too. So all these are great opportunities to engage with other product designers, other managers in general, ask them for their suggestions as well. One question that came up is about coding. We didn't touch upon that, but yes, so coding, at the very least, you need to know what can be done with code, because product, even more than UX, is closer to the delivery of something. So you need to have a sense if something is completely like the most complicated things on earth, or it's going to be fairly easy to deliver as your product. The shipping cycles are really important in a company. There's some company work in sprints, different lengths, but not knowing that something can be super complex can be problematic. The part about knowing to code yourself sometimes can be useful if you want to make, for example, a more advanced prototype, because some things are easier to demonstrate in code than in just using any prototyping tool. Now, there's tons of prototyping tools now out there that allow you to do it, so don't get scared. That's not, you don't have to know how to code and everything, but having the at least the knowledge of what can be done, I think it's really been useful to me and Matteo over the years.
Yeah. And last but not least, but I believe that you all are here because you know ADPList. Connect with people. This is important. Having a mentor is important. Group like ADPList are super useful for that. In ADPList, we are all here just because of passion and we want to be helpful. But in general, you can find a mentor or someone that can help you to try to understand what you want in the end. It is important to understand what we want before we can find what we actually are searching for.
Absolutely. Any questions or anything else here? I know Simon keeps us honest here, time-wise. I know we have about 12 minutes left or something.
Yeah.
I want to do a raffle and we want to do a couple other things. I can show Cloud, or we can answer some questions.
I think that's up to you guys. I don't know how long your cloud demo is.
We can give very quick overview,
Yeah.
and actually can do it. Okay, so while we do that, so let me exit full screen mode. What we're looking at now is the presentation that we put together. Matteo and I actually was put together in Sketch, right? I was just showing in full screen in the browser. You can see actually is just a simple prototype. And here are all the artboards that are in Sketch. In Sketch itself, it would have looked like this. And I don't know if you're familiar with design tools in general, but in Sketch, you have pages, layers on the left side. All the artboards are organized this way. You can turn on and off the prototyping links that are basically just a way for me to go to the next slide. On the right side, whenever you select something, you see the properties on the right side. If I were to select text, you can then set all the properties for that text. You have the toolbar up here. This is just Sketch in general if you never used it. You can see any components that are coming from this document or coming from other libraries. If I had installed other libraries, in this case, I don't have anything in this specific document. But if I were to go to the cloud, and as you can see, Matteo and I collaborated on this document, right? You can see both faces here. If Matteo were in the same document, he could, there you go, speak of Matteo, and he shows up. He can, I can decide to follow him. And so now if he's making changes, I can just see whatever he's doing. And I can decide to, let me move this. I don't know if you can see. Yep, is moving around, making changes. I can also decide to stop following him, and now I can focus on my own thing and make changes. The moment we save, I'm gonna hit Command Save. An update is created, and I can go view in the browser. And now we're seeing just another view of the same tab. And you can see this is all the history of the changes that Matteo and I worked on together. This is just that I saved, doesn't mean Matteo didn't do anything for many hours. Just mean that the person that saved here is the one that contributed. Matteo now might have saved again. And so actually, no, that was my save. But you can see there's two people collaborating in this document, and there's no limit to the amount of people that can collaborate. At the moment, you can collaborate only through a Mac app. But you can see the result in the cloud. So if you were sharing with stakeholders, you can share by sharing the link, this one. You can click a prototype, and you can view a prototype with hotspots or without. If I were to click on something like this, I can see the history of this specific artboard. Now, this might have not changed much. Yes, it changed because I started from a different presentation, of course. If you wanted to, I can go and inspect things. So if you use, for example, things like Zeppelin, this is getting into that territory where you can actually hand it off to a developer and they can copy all the properties for this text layer, position, for example. They can copy all the styles. This is a proprietary font, so that's specified as marked right here. You can choose colors. You can choose the colors in Hex or RGB. Let me see if I can find another document that's a little better for this. Here you can switch through different workspaces. Matteo and I have a workspace where we organize the documents for these talks or workshops, for example, or where we're trying to investigate something new that you can do in Sketch. For example, this is looks more like what a team would look like. A team would have a workspace with all the documents in it and a variety of projects. And you can filter by that project and see only the documents related to the project, or you can jump right into something. In this case, I can show you something that is ready for handoff. And so here, when you go and inspect it, in the inspector here, you can see also that, let's see if I have a color like that. You can see this color is using color variables, which you might have heard of if you've done some coding, or it's just a color token, the closest thing to a color token, the ability to define a color once and reuse it everywhere. For styles, text styles, we also have the same thing. You can show, soon we'll be showing also the layer style name. And you can also navigate things by finding the layer list by clicking here. If a designer had defined assets here, the assets would also be available for download on this page. So this is a convenient way, and it's free to share with developers and anybody not on Mac to just see the things in cloud. So this is kind of the gist. Matteo, you can share libraries the moment you are working with a design team on a shared product. You probably want to start having some common assets. Those common assets can be text styles, colors, layer styles, components in general, symbols. So let's say you define a button in the library, you can then reuse it in every project. And if somebody decides to change the button to, let's say you have rounded corners, now the rounded corners will be reflected everywhere you are using those components. And so, yeah, as you can see, these are all libraries. We'll be making some cool updates to cloud in the upcoming weeks. So you will have even more functionality, better ways to search the documents, better ways to then display the documents and be able to surface some more of the information I just mentioned, like be able to see components in a document. You have a My Draft where, for example, if you were to work on your own document, you can save it here. These are basically private documents just for you. You then can decide to move it into a workspace when you're ready to share it with the rest of the team. Once you move it into a workspace, you cannot move it back because at that point it is a workspace document and it's meant to be, other people could be editing that document and making changes. You don't want to take it away from them. Obviously, you can delete documents. They're kept there for 90 days. And you can also be invited to contribute to a document in somebody else's workspace. They just have to invite you. And you can do it this way under document settings. I can go sharing here. And as you can see, I can invite somebody that is not even in my team. I can just put it here. I can say, invite them to view, to inspect if, for example, they're a developer, or give them added access if they're somebody that already has a Sketch account with a Mac license and seat. And in that case, they can add it with you. And you can enable and disable artboard comments if you want to limit the conversation. I think this is the fastest overview of workspaces I ever given.
5 minutes one. No, yeah, it is a super quick one, but it is, super insightful.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I think Sketch came a long way. I was like an early user of it, and I mean, it's taken leaps and bounds since its early inception for sure. We have about 4 minutes left. So maybe what we can do is just end our time with a quick Q&A for some questions that didn't quite make it into the presentation. So the first one is, I think, about the raffle. I got a couple One's about those. So the winners will be announced on the ADPList LinkedIn page. So stay tuned for that. And if you don't follow it, then please do so you don't miss out. Also, if you learned something interesting today, please use that same hashtag, ADPListXsketch, to sort of just post on your socials about interesting things that you learned from both Matteo and Francesco. I certainly did, so I'd be interested to see what other people learned as well. Okay, cool. So back to the panel. Here's an interesting one. Someone asked, my portfolio is consisted mostly of hypothetical projects. Is that okay? I have no actual client work.
Yeah, I mean, like, so, you know, if that's the only option, absolutely, go for it. Will allow you to show what you can do by yourself. If that's, you know, like when you are part of a larger team, let's say a normal team in a bigger company can be easily 5, 10 more people, right? And so it can be tricky to see what you can accomplish by yourself. That's why that transparency is important. So yeah, absolutely do your own project. Just be mindful when eventually especially if you're doing a project for a company you're applying to, be mindful that what you're coming up with might have been something that they already came up with and discarded for whatever internal reason. That, you know, and there might be a lot of, I don't want to say politics inside the company, but you might be touching on something that can be sensitive internally, either because some people wanted to do it and some other didn't want to do it. So you want to make sure that you touch on something that maybe is either an exploration, but anyway, the point is, do it. Just be mindful about how you do it. Matteo, you wanted to say something and I interrupted.
No, I just want to reiterate the fact that you can treat your portfolio as a product. So even your portfolio is something that is a showcase itself. So I don't know, you can find a way to welcome me, you know, in the proper way. You have to take care of me as a hiring manager or a recruiter that are looking at your portfolio. Helping me also to find a good way to communicate with you, like how I can pronounce your name is something that many people forget, but it is difficult to pronounce a name in a different language or a name that you don't know how to pronounce. So help me in those areas. It will show me that you are taking care of me and of your design, your work, and this is important. So even if you don't have proper design that you can show, proper product, real product that you can showcase, you can use your portfolio as one of them. And just to mention, the 99.9% of the things I did are under NDA, so I don't have a portfolio at the moment. Right. I mean, it is possible to find a job, it is possible to find different ways to showcase what you did, but it is important to show, to expose to me the things in the right way.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think we have time for one last question. It's going to be a hard one. You guys want a hard one or an easy one?
Go for it. Go for it.
All right. Christian says that I feel like I'm too old to be making a transition. So how did you guys navigate that?
Okay. May I ask, not the age, but if you have a previous experience in anything else that is somewhat related, or you feel like you're completely coming from something that you wouldn't be able to leverage?
Christian, do you want to speak to that?
In the meantime,
yes.
I transitioned to design when I was 35. I don't know if this is old or not, and personally I don't care. I know people that moved to design a lot later than me, and of course this is a competition with younger people that have got more time. Maybe they still don't have a family or daughters or anyone that they should take care of. So it is more difficult. But at the same time, there are other things that an older people have that a younger doesn't, like the experience that you accumulated during your time working also in other environments and in other departments are things that are part of you. and they are things that you cannot learn in school and you cannot learn in 1 year. Those are things that are part of you and that are not part of the competition that is younger than you. So again, you can, you should find your strongest point of view. You should know them. You should know where you are more weak, and you should use them properly. But definitely, I believe that it is possible to transition between different environments, even if when you're older. I mentioned that Christian is in retail and fine arts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it is possible. It really depends on the angle you want to point your focus on, particularly at the beginning. But it is possible to transition from more or less every different area. It is hard. I cannot say that it's easy.
Right.
It is a hard move. But the passion that we have as designers, you can see that we are all passionate. I believe that Simon is passionate as well, and Felix and all the people in ADPList are so passionate because we are doing it in our free time. And it is still designing. It's still helping people to design their career, etc. I really believe that it is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oops, the voice of Francesco is gone.
Uh-oh, Francesco. I think we lost him.
Yeah. But anyway, just to finish, I transitioned. I had already a daughter. I didn't do UI before in my life anytime. I was a coder, a project manager. I discovered that I was doing UX already, partially, research and wireframing and all those kind of things without knowing it. But then I discovered what design means and what design means for me. And it is a passion that I cannot stop to develop every day. And I'm curious, and every day I'm learning something new. And this is something that makes me feel happy every single day.
Yep. Thank you for that answer. I think that was a fantastic answer, Matteo. That's it for the event, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Again, post your takeaways on hashtag ADPListXsketch. Stay tuned to the ADPList LinkedIn page to see who the winners are. It could be you. And feel free to connect with Francesco, Matteo, or I on LinkedIn or any other forms of social. But that's it. Great meeting you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
And you. Bye, everyone. Francesco's back.
Yeah, I'm back. I had absolutely, I was completely disappeared, lost the connection. I apologize, everyone. Thank you for